All right, Leviticus 19, we get to go over today. Some really interesting ideas that we're going to learn today. We've kind of looked at some laws for more of a here's what not to do. So now we're going to learn a bit more about the perspective and frame of mind that the Lord expects the children of Israel to have, and thus us really should have the same thing. So Israel is commanded, be holy, live righteously, love your neighbor, and keep the commandments. The Lord reveals and reaffirms sundry laws and commandments. Enchantments, wizardry, prostitution, all evil practices are forbidden. So this shouldn't sound too far off. Be holy, live righteously, love your neighbor, keep the commandments. Pretty simple. We still follow those edicts today. The gospel still is the same conceptually today as it was back then. Very, very important. It hasn't really changed that much. How it's administered might have changed. Some of the programs we use to administer teachings and ideas have changed, but the concepts are still there. And that's the beautiful part of it. That's why we believe that the Old Testament is just as important as the New Testament in understanding the gospel of Jesus Christ. Verse 1, the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, gave him a revelation, speak unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, and say unto them, ye shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. Now this is great, okay? I think this is great because, again, this is God saying, here's where I want you to be. I want you to be up here at the same level I'm at. But the gospel, the beauty of it is I'm going to teach you from this level, and then we're going to grow you to this point. That's really what's going on here. It's really cool. He's not saying, I expect perfection and demand perfection. If you're not perfect, you're screwed. No. He says, here's the goal. Here's the mark. Here's where you need to set your expectation. And we're going to start here and work you up into that direction. That's awesome. Verse 3, ye shall fear every man his mother and his father, and keep my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God. So again, there's that end of sentence phrase, okay? Be respectful of mothers and fathers and keep your Sabbath days. Very important. Those go together, honestly. There's something to that about coming together, honoring what your mother and father say, and keeping the Sabbath day holy. In fact, I'm curious, what do you think? Put in the comments what you think is that connection and similarities between honoring your father and mother and keeping the Sabbath day holy. I'd like to hear some of your thoughts on that. Verse 4, turn ye not unto idols, nor make to yourselves molten gods. I am the Lord your God. Again, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not create graven image, those kinds of things, part of the Ten Commandments. Verse 5, if ye offer a sacrifice of peace offerings unto the Lord, ye shall offer it with all your own will. So if you're going to offer a sacrifice, be all in. Be very serious about the sacrifice. Don't be like, oh, I got to go do this today. All right, I'll just go get it done. Whatever. I got to get it done, and then I can move on. Be committed. Be all in with what you're doing, basically. Don't approach your religion at a half-wit direction. Be all in. Verse 6, it shall be eaten the same day ye offer it, and on the morrow, and if aught remain until the third day, it shall be burnt in the fire. And if it be eaten at all on the third day, it is abominable. It shall not be accepted. So again, once you've cooked the meat, it has to be eaten within a certain time frame. Otherwise, you got to get rid of it. Okay. Part of that's probably just to deal with ritualistic things. Don't want it to linger. Part of it's probably because of they didn't have refrigerators, so food spoiled. Food still went bad, so you had this window of opportunity of freshness, and then you had to get rid of it. Therefore, everyone that eateth it shall bear his iniquity, because he hath profaned the hallowed thing of the Lord, and that soul shall be cut off from among his people. So basically, if you eat the food outside of that 3-day window, you're kicked out of society. Basically, you got to pay the price for your own sin. The sacrifice isn't going to cover it. Verse 9, when you reap the harvest, of your land, okay, thou shalt not wholly reap the corners of thy field, neither shalt thou gather the gleanings of thy harvest. You could look up in the Bible dictionary, harvest and gather. Agriculture as well is another place to learn more about this. This is what's fascinating, Kay. If you want to look for how can I use the laws of God to help me be wealthy? How can I use this for financial gain in my life? Verses 9 through 13 are those types of laws. What is God's laws to help you be wealthy? So the first one here, verse 9, he says, when you go out to reap your field, Don't worry about the corners, basically. Don't try to get everything out. Leave some of the crop in the field, basically. Verse 10, thou shalt not glean thy vineyard, neither shalt thou gather every grape of thy vineyard. Thou shalt leave them for the poor and stranger. I am the Lord your God. So this is an important point, basically, is when you go out to make money, don't try to make all the money you can. It's okay to leave some on the table for others. It's okay to leave things where people can get them. Now, back then, they didn't necessarily have grocery stores to buy food and to do things. So if you had no money and you were hungry, you basically became a servant to somebody. You had to work for them to earn your meals. That's part of the job. You work for me, I feed you and house you, basically. That's how it worked back then. So it was very different type of economy than we have today. So we have to realize this, that if you were a farmer and you went out and gleaned your field, I mean, you're going to substantially get the overwhelming majority of the grain and use that for your benefit. If a little bit of grain is left in the corners of the field, it doesn't make sense to when you're plowing, if you notice, farmers go to the end of the field and then they turn and come back up. They need to continually keep moving. They don't have time to go back and catch these corners. So there's parts of the crop that is left. Some of the grain is left. That is okay. That is left for the poor. So the poor can go out after you've got yours. The poor can go out and actually glean the extras and use that to feed their family. And that's okay. That's kind of like a tithing or a fast offering, in a way, a free will offering that you're giving. Is I'm going to leave this here. Wandering strangers can come by and go, oh, look, that field is gleaned. Let me go get some of the grain that was left. And that is now a portion I can eat as I walk by. That's important, okay? That's what he's talking about. So in financial terms, this is something that we can do ourselves. We shouldn't try to suck all the money out of a deal. We shouldn't try to get the absolute best deal we can for ourselves. We should be considerate of the other side of the transaction. We should allow other people to still make money and to not be so greedy that we can't actually help the poor. Kind of a Ebenezer Scrooge type idea. Be tight with your money. Those kinds of things, basically. Right, verse 11, ye shall not steal, neither deal falsely, neither lie to one another. Ye shall not swear by my name falsely, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy God. I am the Lord. So this is talking about lying, cheating, and stealing. Those are banned. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't make a promise and then, but it's false. You never intended to fulfill that promise, basically. That's bad. Don't deal falsely with people. Be honest. Have integrity in what you do. That is very, very important. Okay, and that's important too in our day and age. Deal honestly. Can you imagine if everybody no one stole from stores, employees didn't rob their employers, employers didn't rob their employees, all that stuff. If the whole economy ran with honesty and integrity, we would have so much more money in the economy. It would be amazing. Like, there would be a wealth effect for everybody. So amazing. It's so bad how much greed and selfishness and pride really weigh down our economy. Verse 13, thou shalt not defraud thy neighbor, neither rob him. The wages of him that is hired shall not abide with thee all night until the morning. So verse 13, kind of an interesting one, because it's basically saying, look, you shouldn't steal from your neighbor. You shouldn't rob him. So basically, if your neighbor hires you to do a job and you get paid, but you don't do it, you've defrauded him. That's not good. You should do the job. So if you get hired and you just sit at your desk and do nothing all day long and get paid, that's defrauding your employer, basically. Kind of just as an example, basically, but that's something to think about. That's what they're talking about here is, again, having honesty in the workplace. Okay, verse 14, thou shalt not curse the deaf, nor put a stumbling block before the blind, but shalt fear thy God. I am the Lord. So don't be a jerk to people with disabilities. It's basically what it is. Don't be a jerk to them. Just because he can't hear you doesn't mean you should curse them out. Just because they can't see doesn't mean you should trip them or cause them to fall for your enjoyment. Do not be mean. Do not be a bully. Do not cause problems for people with disabilities. Basically what it says. But thou shalt fear thy God is what it says basically. So why should you not mess with them? Because God is watching you and you are going to pay a price for that. And he's going to make sure you pay a price for that. Maybe not in this life, but a price will come that God will exact because you hurt somebody who couldn't take care of themselves. Now remember, the atonement covers those who need help. We all really need help, some more than others in certain ways. And that the people with disabilities have more claim on the atonement. And so if you mess with them, they're covered by the atonement, which means God will avenge them and take care of that. And that'll probably be at the day of judgment. And that point, it's kind of too late to repent. So just don't mess with them. Just be kind to people. Don't be a bully or a jerk to people. It's pretty simple. Pretty darn simple. Okay, verse 15, ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty, but in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbor. Basically, so this is talking about being unjust in how you are dealing with people. Again, honesty and integrity. Let's not aggrandize people. Let's not put people down. Basically, this is important in here. There's actually an interesting footnote. Let me go back to verse 14 for a second. There's a footnote that I missed in here that says, when it says, I am the Lord, it actually means Jehovah. This phrase occurs 15 times, like a seal of authority upon each of these statutes. So that phrase gets used a lot. Again, it's end of sentence. This is it. Here's the authority. I am God, and I'm telling you to do this. So it's coming. You know it's coming from God. So if you don't follow it, you're in trouble. You are in trouble. Verse 16, thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer, among thy people, neither shalt thou stand against the blood of thy neighbor. I am the Lord. So what does this mean, a talebearer? If you look at the footnote, gossip. Don't go around spreading lies about people or getting into this gossip stuff. Okay? That is not what you are to do. You're not there to stand up against the blood of thy neighbor. You're not there to, he is so bad, he is terrible, he is blah, 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 blah. I'm better than them, kind of a thing. That's not good. That's not good. And it says it right there. Don't do it. Verse 17, thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor and not suffer sin upon him. So this is an important one as well. Again, don't hate people. Show kindness to them. Be nice to them. Don't try to rebuke the person. Basically, if they're committing sin, basically, if you look in the footnote, though you may reprove a neighbor and not tolerate his sin, do not hate him. It's kind of what it says. Love the sinner, hate the sin, kind of idea. Don't hate him because they've committed a sin, basically. Verse 18, thou shalt not avenge, nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord. This is a great one. Verse 18 is an important one because when you look at this, okay, this goes back to what we talked about last chapter about mercy and justice. Okay, it says right there basically, thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge. Don't worry about seeking justice. But what does it want us to do? Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I want you to forgive them, and I want you to show them mercy. That is so important. It's not about seeking justice, seeking revenge. It's about showing mercy and love. That's exactly what God wants us to do. Show mercy and love to people. Once we understand mercy and love, then we will understand justice. So that's important. Go watch the last video to learn more about our discussion on that one. Verse 19, ye shall keep my statutes. Thou shalt not let thy cattle gender with a diverse kind. Thou shalt not sow thy field with mingled seed, neither shall a garment mingled of linen and woolen come upon thee. So don't basically do things in their proper way. Don't mix stuff. Don't confuse these rules, is what it's really talking about. Verse 20, and whosoever lieth carnally with a woman, that is, a bondmaid betrothed to an husband, and not at all redeemed, nor freedom given her, she shall be scourged. They shall not be put to death, because she was not free. So 20 is kind of interesting, because basically, if you have a maid, if you have a female servant, and you try to sleep with her, she has limited culpability in this. Basically, you, as the owner, have more responsibility in this matter. She doesn't have as much, so she'll be scourged, but not like put to death, basically. Because the sin, you remember, the sin of fornication, the punishment for fornication was death. You commit adultery, you're dead, basically. But because this is verse 20, because that woman didn't have the ability to make that choice, she's not killed. She might be scourged, which is beaten like a whip, but not killed. Okay, that's kind of an interesting distinction that is made there. Verse 21, he shall bring his trespass offering unto the Lord, unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, even a ram for a trespass offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for him with the ram of the trespass offering before the Lord for his sin, which he hath done. And the sin which he hath done shall be forgiven him. So if you commit a sin, okay, you break these laws, you need to bring a ram for a trespass offering to the door of the tabernacle and work with the priest to get that done. And once it's all done, you will be forgiven. Because again, you need to come with a contrite heart, broken heart, contrite spirit, and truly seeking for forgiveness in order for that to work. Verse 23, when ye shall come into the land, meaning the promised land they're coming to, and shall have planted all manner of trees for food, then ye shall count the fruit thereof as uncircumcised. 3 years shall it be as uncircumcised unto you, it shall not be eaten of. But in the 4th year all the fruit thereof shall be holy to praise the Lord withal. And the 5th year shall ye eat the fruit thereof, that it may yield unto you the increase thereof. I am the Lord your God. So he's saying here, when you get to the promised land, you're going to plant trees, fruit trees and other types of trees, to get nuts and seeds and berries and fruit from. And he says basically the first 3 years, don't eat it. That is considered uncircumcised. So this concept of circumcision comes up. In fact, Ginsburg in Institutes of Biblical Law said, the metaphorical use of circumcision is thus explained by the text itself. It denotes the fruit as disqualified or unfit. In Leviticus 26:41, which we're getting into soon, the same metaphor is used for the heart, which is stubborn or not ripe to listen to the divine admonitions. And in other passages of Scripture, it is used with reference to lips and ears, which do not perform their proper functions. So he's saying basically, first 3 years of fruit, don't eat it. It is considered unclean. It's uncircumcised, so it's not fit to be used in things. So you don't use it. So wait till the 4th year, then it's okay. And the 5th year, you can eat it as well and then start to grow and do more. Why that was, I'm not exactly sure why that was. Sometimes the fruit, the first couple years, maybe isn't quite as good because it's still growing and improving itself. So just leave it alone, let it grow, let it do its thing, and then you can eat it as it gets bigger and stronger. Maybe that's it. I'm not 100% sure that, as far as like, why would that be logically sound advice? We don't know. If you have any ideas on that, I grew up around fruit trees, pruning them and working with them and things, but nothing's coming to mind that says why you couldn't eat it. It's one thing like the animals, because there's bacteria and problems that can come if they're not handled properly, but for fruit, it should be okay. But maybe those first 3 years are seen as unholy to be used, so let the animals have them. And then you can have yours after that. Verse 26, ye shall not eat anything with the blood, neither shall ye use enchantment nor observe times. So don't eat anything with the blood in it. You need to drain the blood out first. Don't use the blood. Don't eat the blood when you're eating the animal, basically. Pretty simple. We've talked about that several times before. Enchantment is interesting. This is something here. It says the Hebrew word nachash, translated as enchantment, meant to practice divination. And the phrase observe times comes from the Hebrew word meaning to observe clouds. This is Wilson's book, Old Testament World Studies. In the ancient world, sorcerers and necromancers often claimed to read the future through various omens or objects. Their methods included watching the stars, astrology, observing the movements of clouds and certain animals, tying knots, casting lots, tossing arrows into the air, and then reading the pattern of how they fell, and so on. See Hastings' Dictionary of the Bible, Magic and Divination and Sorcery. So what this means basically is do not try to use other ways to do things. Don't try to use divinations and things to do spiritual stuff. So there is a authorized way to do spiritual things and unauthorized way. And avoid the unauthorized ways of doing spiritual things, basically is what it is. So that's what they're talking about here, okay? Now, verse 27 is kind of a strange one. This one's a little weird. Ye shall not round the corners of your heads, neither shalt thou mar the corners of thy beard. That's why would cutting your beard be something, or rounding the corners of your heads? So something I found on this basically, and this comes from, let me see, Clark in his Bible commentary book. He says Leviticus 19:27 and the following verse evidently refer to customs which must have existed among the Egyptians when the Israelites sojourned in Egypt. And what they were, it is now difficult, even with any probability, to conjecture. Herodotus observes that the Arabs shave or cut their hair round in honor of Bacchus, the god of wine, who they say had his hair cut in this way. So like instead of the beard coming out, it kind of curved the beard, basically. Sometimes you'll see that with not Akkadian, Sumerian gods, type of maybe something kind of like that. He says he also says that the Machians, a people of Libya, cut their hair round so as to leave a tuft on the top of the head. In this manner, the Chinese cut their hair to the present day. This might have been in honor of some idol and therefore forbidden to the Israelites. The hair was much used in divination among the ancients and for purposes of religious superstition among the Greeks, and particularly about the time of the giving of this law, as this is supposed to have been the era of the Trojan War. We learn from Homer that it was customary for parents to dedicate the hair of their children to some god, which, when they came to manhood, they cut off and consecrated to the deity. Achilles, at the funeral of Patroclus, cut off his golden locks, which his father had dedicated to the river god Spercheius, and threw them into the flood. If the hair was rounded and dedicated for purposes of this kind, it will at once account for the prohibition in this verse. So there's things that, again, there's rituals and things that the world does to talk about their devotions to a god. We are not to be involved in those rituals. Basically, we should worship the Lord the way he wants us to worship him, which is keeping his commandments, which is being nice to people, being honest, having integrity, keeping those commandments, offering those proper sacrifices in the days of Moses, basically. So that's what's important there. 28, ye shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor print any marks upon you. I am the Lord. So don't cut your body. Don't mar up your body for ritual purposes. Verse 29, do not prostitute thy daughter to cause her to be a whore, lest the land fall to whoredom and the land become full of wickedness. Pretty straightforward. Verse 30, ye shall keep my Sabbaths and reverence my sanctuary. I am the Lord. So keep Sabbath day holy. Remember, there's a whole chapter in Leviticus that talks about if you break the Sabbath, it's capital punishment. You get killed. So keep the Sabbath, reverence my sanctuary. So treat the tabernacle, the congregation, with holiness. It's not a common place. It is a holy place. This is probably a little bit of why the Savior was so mad, of course, when he cleaned the temple courtyard out because of all the money changers. Now, really, if you think about it, that temple courtyard is the tabernacle of the congregation. So that is the area where the average person can come to worship. And they couldn't because they turned it into a market of economic exchange. So he kicked them out so that people could come worship properly. Verse 31, regard not them that have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards to be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. So if it has what's called a familiar spirit, okay, or it basically is kind of, oh, this seems kind of right, kind of familiar, but it's not the real way to do things, avoid that, okay? Avoid anything that looks like it's religious, but it's actually really not based in proper authority and proper usage, okay? That's basically what it comes down to. It looks religious, but it's not done with proper authority. Those are things you got to be careful with. Okay, verse 32, thou shalt rise up before the hoary head and honor the face of the old man and fear thy God. I am the Lord. So what that's talking about, of course, is basically you should honor your elders. Basically, if you have a different interpretation of that, let me know. That would be great. Let's see, verse 33, if a stranger sojourn with thee in your land, ye shall not vex him. But the stranger that dwelleth with you shall be unto you as one born among you. Thou shalt love him as thyself, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Basically, that one is pretty straightforward, I think, realizing that we should treat strangers among us just like they're one of us. Treat them fine. Treat them with respect, with love, with dignity, all those things. And I think part of that reason is this probably goes back to the time of Abraham with Sodom and Gomorrah. If you go back into the book of Genesis, look at our videos around that, it was so crazy what happens if you were a traveler and you came into the land of Sodom. They treated you really, really bad. Holy cow. There's a reason the word sodomize comes from Sodom. And it was just nuts what they did. So go back in our videos on Genesis to look that up. Verse 35, ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment, in meat yard, in weight, or in measure. Just balances, just weights, just ephah, and just hin shall ye have. I am the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall ye observe all my statutes, all my judgments, and do them. I am the Lord. So again, verse 35 and verse 36 about righteous judgment is an important one. Those are laws of wealth also. When you look at that, basically, you should make sure that you're doing things honestly and representing things appropriately. So a meat yard signified such Hebrew measures of length as the reed, the span, and the cubit, while the ephah and the hin were measures of volume. By specifying both kinds of measures, the Lord clearly taught that honesty in all transactions was required. So if you're going to exchange, hey, I'm going to give you a pound of grain for a pound of meat, you're not cheating the scales. You're not trying to cheat that person out. You're not giving them, half a pound of grain with a small lead weight in the bottom to make it heavier or whatever. You're not trying to cheat them. Basically, be honest in your transactions and in your doings. It's a very important thing to look at. So more about commerce, about the laws of how to righteously gain wealth and do business, basically. So thanks for watching. Hopefully learn some good things. Leave some notes in the comments what your thoughts are of what we talked about today, and we'll see you next chapter.